crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you for joining us tonight. Got a really interesting panel of guests and an interesting topic that really is right off the news and the headlines and super timely for us tonight. Before we get into those details, a reminder of how you can be a part of our conversation. There are ways you can call, text, email, that information at the bottom of your screen all throughout the show tonight. Also, attorneys from Hollis Wright are standing by live for a free, off-air, and confidential conversation. That is an opportunity for you, so take advantage of that if you want to get some free off-air legal advice. Josh Wright is the managing partner of Hollis Wright. He's going to lead our conversation tonight. Hope you're doing well.
Doing great, David, and really happy to be on the show this week. We do not shy away from interesting topics, and especially topics that are relevant material in society. We're going to be talking a lot today about immigration benefits and options for undocumented workers, undocumented immigrants in the United States. We're very lucky to have Nathan Harris on today. As we talk about, there are a lot of times that our firm may not be an expert in an area, and we bring on the expert, and Nathan is unquestionably, with his firm, an expert in this area to be able to talk about the types of benefits and just generally immigration law. And so we're super excited to have you on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on. Appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. All right. So I said before we started, I would have you enunciate the name of your firm. Give me the name of your firm.
That's right. My firm is Abogados Centro Legal in Hoover.
I love that. How did you get into this area of the law? How did the firm get into this area of the law? Because I know you do some personal injury-based work too, but how did you get into just generally this topic of immigration? And it's kind of a hot topic right now.
It is a hot topic right now, but I kind of got into it naturally. I'm Hispanic by heritage. My family is from the country of Ecuador, which is a small country on the equator in South America. Was born and raised, grown up in Alabama all of my life. Went to Alabama Law School and been practicing about 10 years. And so I just kind of fell into helping immigrants. I've always wanted to help those that needed our help. And here in Alabama, immigrants need our help. And so we've been helping immigrants for the better part of 10 years here in Hoover.
And so talk to me just a little bit about before we started the show, you were talking about this area of the law is ever changing. What is that? Is it that there's new presidents in office and new Congresses, that are in D.C. and they come up with new laws that impact immigration? I mean, what's the ever changing component to this?
It's all of it. Okay, so it's new laws, and then not just laws, but executive actions and memorandum put out by the presidents on different enforcement of those laws, of immigration laws. And so that it ranges from DACA that was put into action by President Obama's executive order in 2012. Before that, we had a U visa that came about in about the year 2000. And then every couple of years, there seems to be some changes in immigration law. And even right now, there's with our current administration, Biden is looking at doing some executive orders, changing up some immigration through executive orders. And also, there's some Democrats and Republicans that are proposing different immigration laws. So comprehensive immigration reform may be on the precipice right now.
Can I ask you real quick, because you and your family, you were raised here, so I guess your mom, your family kind of went through the process you're helping folks go through now. How different is it? I mean, whenever that happened, whenever they came here versus where we are today, how vastly different is that process and the landscape now versus then?
Like you said, it's completely vastly different. So my dad was in the Peace Corps in the 70s. He went to Ecuador. He met my mom at a embassy party, and so they were well connected. Right. And to get her visa for her to come here, they just talked to their friends in the embassy. They rubber stamped everything, and they were on the plane. Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. Everything right now has to follow the proper legal procedures. Even if you know the consul or know the ambassador, it still can be difficult to get those visas, because now that there are quotas on visas, they're only giving out certain number of certain visas every year, and it's a lot more complex.
Right.
Nathan, I know you have to keep updated at all times on changes in the law to make sure that you're representing clients at your firm correctly.
Sure.
Is there an agency or an entity that helps give advisory opinions? Like, you've got with tax-related issues, there's an agency that puts out tax recommendations and adjustments in the law that people can follow. How do you keep up with all this? Because this is an ever-changing area of the law.
Sure. So my immigration attorneys are members of AILA. So that's kind of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. But then also we wait for guidance from USCIS and the Department of Homeland Security. Okay. So whenever there's some changes, substantive changes in immigration law or enforcement, either Homeland Security or USCIS, which is the immigration arm of the executive branch, will release memorandums of understanding and things like that on how that they're going to be enforcing those new changes.
And I want to ask you this, not from a political perspective, because I know there will be some people watching the show tonight that will have strong opinions, and you probably see it in your practice.
Oh, every day.
And I'm not asking you a political question. I'm just asking in general. Under the previous administration with President Trump versus Biden, are you seeing an adjustment towards more openness during the Biden administration at this early stage compared to where we were with Trump from an immigration perspective? Or is the policy and procedure kind of the same? What are you seeing kind of from a trending perspective?
Sure.
And I know that's a broad question, but
it's a broad question, and so I'll answer it very broadly. Yes, we're seeing a lot more openness. On Biden's first day in office, he was go ahead and issuing some executive orders regarding immigration. So we're seeing him trend those policies and procedures away from the way that the Trump administration had been closing down immigration. So he's trying to open up immigration. He's actually issued a memorandum saying that DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, should be completely opened up like it was back in 2012 under the Obama administration. Okay. He's created a task force to look into reunification of children at the border. So he's taking a lot of steps to open up immigration and try to free up that backlog.
As far as just kind of this general topic, do you find that your other practice, which is the personal injury practice, spills over into these type cases? Meaning, does one side, the immigration side, generate business on the other side? Like, what do you generally see in your practice?
Absolutely. And so when I wanted to practice, I tried to select who I wanted to help. And so that would be the undocumented immigrant in Alabama. And so I thought, okay, what kind of problems do they have? And I've always liked personal injury law. My dad sold insurance for 30-something years. He still does. So I knew I wanted to go into personal injury law. And I knew I wanted to help immigrants. And so I looked at what kind of problems they're having. Every one of my clients, almost, a high percentage of them, have immigration problems. Yeah. So we don't really advertise a whole lot for our immigration cases, but we have, by and far, the most amount of immigration cases in our firm. Cases are immigration cases in our firm. And so those guys, they're construction workers. They're the guys out there getting hurt. And so we're able to help them. We're able to bring them in and cross them over from an immigration client to a personal injury client when they have those issues. Gotcha. And we're able to help them. And then having that immigration component also helps in those personal injury cases because sometimes we're able to get them some immigration benefits that can really help them in those personal injury cases, especially if it's a case that we're going to have to take to a jury. Gotcha. And inoculate some of those illegal immigrant type issues.
Gotcha. All right, I know we're going to break. Mm-hmm. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the avenues that Nathan and his firm have to help undocumented immigrants and how that process works.
All right, we are stepping aside. We'll be right back with Nathan and Josh after this quick break, so stay with us.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with The Attorneys.
Welcome back into The Attorneys, talking about immigration law. If you know someone who this topic really would be of interest to them, might want to give them a call. A really interesting conversation. Now back to Josh and Nathan.
All right, so Nathan, let's talk for a minute. Give me some of the legal avenues and undocumented has. U visa, for example, and DACA are two examples. Let's just kind of break those down a little bit.
So we handle a lot of U visa cases in our office. We handle a lot of DACA cases in our office. And the U visa is a non-immigrant visa that Congress put out there in about the year 2000. And so it's a benefit that Congress has given to basically undocumented immigrants in the United States who have been victims of certain crimes, but also who help law enforcement go after the perpetrators of those crimes. So it's got a couple different things that the undocumented immigrant has to do to be able to receive that U visa. But at the end of the day, that U visa can actually be a pathway after several years to a lawful permanent resident status, and then after several more years of lawful permanent resident status, it can be a pathway all the way to citizenship. So it's a long road, usually takes better part of 10 years, but if they get that U visa, it can walk them all the way down to a citizen. All
right, let's talk a little bit just in general terms about DACA, and I mean that's been an issue obviously in the media and in politics for decades, but tell us a little bit about how does DACA work and what is the intent of that?
Yeah, so DACA is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So over the years, immigrants have come to this country, and they just haven't come by themselves, older immigrants looking for jobs. They brought their whole families over. So we're talking about kids, we're talking about babies, and so DACA affects those who are, teenagers and younger at that time. So we're not talking about adults. And it created a way for not necessarily giving them an immigration benefit, but giving them deferred prosecution. So they could apply for this through the government, through immigration services, and they would be put into a system and given deferred prosecution. And so that would act kind of like a shield against deportation.
And so is there a pathway to citizenship for those children through DACA, or is that through another process?
Right now, there's absolutely no pathway to citizenship through DACA. Okay. It is literally just a deferred prosecution. Now, the government, if a DACA kid is able to show a significant economic need, that they're given a employment authorization document, so that they can go to work, they can get a job, they can pay taxes, they can become a member of society. But no, it doesn't give them any kind of citizenship rights.
And let's talk just in general terms. Let's say someone that is an immigrant from a European country comes over here. They want to become a U.S. citizen, is there a pathway under the current regime and kind of the setup we have? Is there a pathway over a period of time for them to change their citizenship and become a U.S. citizen, just in general terms?
Sure. So in general terms, there are some pathways. Most of the times that they're going to have to, be married to a U.S. citizen or something like that. But it's not as easy as that anymore. You can't just get married to a U.S. citizen, then automatically become a citizen yourself.
Gotcha.
It's become extremely complex to do those family-based petitions like that. I had an attorney working for me out of our Nashville office, and she actually is from Romania. But the only way that she was able to come over to the United States was through an immigration lottery. So she actually won the visa lottery. That's how she was able to come over. So it's become very, very difficult and very, very complex for somebody just to come to the U.S.
Why? What is the reasoning that it's become so complex? Is it a numbers issue? Is that why it made it more complex, or is it because of the political? Because this issue is a bit of a political football, depending on where you. So is it more that it's been politicized, or is it more? It's more complex out of necessity.
Well, I think it's a both and issue.
Okay.
It's both a numbers issue. So we were seeing massive numbers of immigrants coming from, say, Mexico, Guatemala, and even some Caribbean countries. But also, it has become a political issue, especially with the last administration, that we just didn't want any immigrants, especially from Muslim countries and things like that. So it's a both and issue.
So you're saying if you look historically at the number of immigrants, that has just continued to increase if you just look back from where we are now, kind of looking back from a numbers standpoint.
Yeah.
Really.
And so what about, for example, my example, you have someone from, a European country is here, they marry, they have a child in the United States. Is that child instantaneously upon birth a U.S. citizen? Like, how does that process work? Because I know we get questions about that, and they're like, I don't know if my child is a U.S. citizen or not. And we will obviously get them to folks like you to be able to answer those questions. But how does that process generally work?
Yeah, so if you have a baby that is born on U.S. soil, typically that child is automatically a U.S. citizen.
Gotcha.
Just by virtue of being born on U.S. soil. Now, there's some exceptions for, ambassadors abroad and things like that. But if you're here, even on a visit, and you have a child that's born here, that child is a U.S. citizen. And that's actually become a big industry, especially from Asian countries, China, things like that, where they want to plan a trip to the United States right when that child's going to be born. And it's something that the immigration services have cracked down on as well.
Yeah, do you find in y'all's practice that working with immigration services is part of the process? I mean, are you working with immigration services a lot in order to make sure people are filing the appropriate paperwork?
Absolutely. So every one of our immigration cases that we get in, we have to create a file, and then we have to submit that to USCIS and have them look at that and see if they need anything else or see if it's approved or rejected.
All right, I know we're getting ready to go to break here. When we come back, I want to talk about a couple other things related to this issue of immigration and why it's important for people not to be afraid to call someone like Nathan and Nathan's firm if they have legal-related questions.
Perfect. We're going to step aside right here. As we do so, a reminder, don't forget Hollis Wright, a great follow on social media. Wherever you are on social media, you'll find him there. Just search the term Hollis Wright. Stay tuned. Our final segment coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright. In court, attorneys are not allowed to tell juries certain things. For example, we cannot talk about a defendant's net worth, meaning the defendant's ability, resources, or insurance to pay a verdict. In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, why can't lawyers talk about a defendant's net worth to a jury? Now, Rule 403 of the Alabama Rules of Evidence states, in part, relevant evidence may be excluded if its probative value is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice. Long-standing Alabama cases have held that the net worth of a defendant falls under this catch-all rule and is to be excluded. The reasoning behind the rule is that if a jury knows a defendant is wealthy, then the jury might award more money to the plaintiff. And this goes one step further. If an attorney makes any remarks that suggest the defendant is responsible because he is wealthy or rich and the plaintiff is poor, that can be grounds for a new trial. If you're ever on a jury, the reality in our state is this. In almost every lawsuit that goes to trial, the attorneys representing both the plaintiff and the defendant have already looked at whether there's sufficient insurance coverage or assets to satisfy a verdict. Most likely, the parties would not pursue a civil lawsuit if damages could not be paid after a jury returns a verdict. So even though lawyers cannot mention the net worth of a defendant during trial, there likely are resources available to pay a verdict in court. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. And remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. And as always, thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on WDTN 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. A fascinating conversation tonight. And just a reminder, if you would like to take advantage of the opportunity to speak with an attorney from Hollis Wright, you've got about 6 minutes to do so. So the clock is ticking. Give them a call. Josh?
All right, Nathan, let's talk a little bit about deportation and how that process works. In general terms, kind of explain the deportation process and what that is.
Sure. So deportation applies to somebody who is in this country and is not supposed to be in this country, whether they have entered illegally or they have some type of immigration benefit and they have committed a crime or something like that. And now Immigration Services or ICE has come after them and said, it's time for you to go. And so deportation is a legal proceeding. It has to be done in front of an immigration judge. And that's when they actually, after that hearing, is when they physically remove them from the country.
And so are there ways that someone can fight deportation, whether it be academic-based, work-related, they have other family members here? I mean, what is that process?
Sure. And so we do some deportation removal defense in our office, and most of that is based on how long they've been here. So out in the community, if you work with immigrants, you've probably heard the law of 10 years, which is kind of a misnomer. There is no law of 10 years, but it's for this removal defense. You have to have been in the United States for 10 years. You have to show good moral character, which is a lot to show sometimes for someone who is here undocumented. And also you have to show an extreme prejudice to a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident by you being removed, you being the undocumented immigrant.
Do people have the ability to have some form of, I hear the term of green card, for example? If someone comes over and studies, for example, European from country of Africa, whatever, they come over and they want to study it at schools and universities here, do they have a pass to be able to do that and then a certain amount of time where they have to go back to their country afterwards? How does that work?
You're exactly right. So students that are here for studies, that are going to university, that are earning degrees and things like that, they're not supposed to be working. And so after they finish their degree, they're supposed to go back to their country. Okay. And that is the way it is set up. Now, there are different pathways where they can look for different kind of employment visas after that, but those employment visas are set up to look and see if they can be filled, those jobs can be filled with U.S. workers first, and then they look to international workers.
Okay. Yeah. Talk a little bit about the court system. Alabama is one of those states where you can have someone that is undocumented, here illegally, that is injured in a personal injury context, whether it be an industrial accident, a car accident, etc., where they have the ability to still use our courts. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. It does not matter your immigration status here in the state of Alabama or either under the federal system. You can still avail yourself of those courts.
And if you avail yourself of the courts, does ICE sometimes get involved in those proceedings I'm just asking if they intervene or they say, look, this person's undocumented, they shouldn't be here in the first place? I mean, I've heard these stories that, in immigration services, they will find you one way or the other, and the question becomes, are legal proceedings ways where that happens?
I've heard of that happening in a criminal context, so different criminal courts, even municipal criminal courts, never in a civil court. I've actually brought it up and spoken with our different civil judges here in Jefferson County and other surrounding counties, and they said that would be highly improper conduct by ICE in their courthouses, in their courtrooms. So I think that there are some safeguards there, that immigrants, undocumented or otherwise, should not be too worried about these issues when they're pressing their rights in a civil context. And so whether they're seeking redress for personal injury in a car wreck or industrial accident or anything like that.
And I'm assuming that's kind of isn't that the interplay between the immigration side and the personal injury side, that they have the ability and they have rights. It's one of the things, I think, if you really look at it, that makes America as good as it can be, that we're willing to give rights to people that aren't even documented workers, just like we are our own citizens. That's one of the uniquities to the United States compared to other countries.
Absolutely.
And I'm not even talking from a political perspective, just the compassion that we have for all people, to me, is one of the things that's really interesting about our country and unique about our country. But I mean, that's kind of the interplay between those two things, right? Between the civil personal injury side and the immigration side, that those individuals have those rights.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's a great thing that we can actually look and actually help those undocumented immigrants.
Yeah.
Almost out of time, a minute and a half remaining. Just a final thought, though, Nathan, if you would, you go first.
Yeah, my final thought is that if you're an undocumented immigrant, or if you know an undocumented immigrant that's been hurt or injured or anything like that, that they should not fear bringing that case. They should not fear standing on those rights, and they should be looking for an attorney to handle that case.
Yeah, and I would just say that, this is obviously a very controversial topic and has been over the last 4 to 5 years in the United States. There are lawyers out there that their specialty is to make sure that you are protected and have access to our court systems, even if you are undocumented in the United States. And Nathan's a great example of that. His law firm is a great example of that. And so, if you have concerns that this is going to raise a red flag for you, talking with someone like Nathan and his firm to be able to make sure that you're protected is really, really important.
Absolutely.
Name the firm one more time.
Abogados Centro Legal.
Got it.
Fantastic.
I'm not going to try and do that.
Thanks for being with us.
You did a great job
thank you.
today. Great job today, Nathan.
Great job, and a really interesting show. Appreciate you all being with us, and we really appreciate you being with us as well as we wrap things up here. Reminder, would love to have you join the conversation and be a part of this. There are ways to do that. We're going to be here, and we'll be here again next week. So we'll look for you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.